In the world of the fitness industry right now, nutritional industry, even doctors are saying carbohydrates are either good or bad for you. And why is it so confusing? Why is it that we're getting so much mixed messages about carbohydrate intake? What is it about carbohydrates that seems to have and push a button and make people so angry on one fence or the other? Well, let's end this debate, or at least put it into context as to understand why carbohydrates can be good or bad for you. So first and foremost, let's break it down into sections of why carbs could be bad or could be good. And when I say bad, I don't mean bad in a necessary context. It depends on the carb, but it also depends on how much you're having based on your lifestyle. Your lifestyle, not anyone else's, yours. So first and foremost, let's look at carbs if you should have a higher or lower carb content. So if you're trying to lose weight, should you have more or less carbs? Well, I would say personally, and based around nutritional information and advice, that you should have a lower carbohydrate intake, probably about 100 grams. Never try to go over that amount per day. So why is that? What is the reasoning why it's better to have a low carbohydrate intake? Well, most people trying to lose weight are the type of people who have very, very high carbohydrate intake already. Their calorie intake is obviously a lot higher, and fats and proteins will also have an impact on this. But particularly the westernized industrious lifestyle would be that carbs are much higher in your diet than most other things. So cutting out some carbs will actually cut out most calories. Now, you can cut out fats and proteins. However, fats and proteins are more essential for the body than carbohydrates, especially if you're living a sedentary lifestyle. So if you're doing very minimal exercise, or you're just doing a few nice little walks every now and again, and let's face it, there's not a lot else to do, unless you've got your own weights at home. So light walks and jogs, you won't need a high amount of carbohydrate intake. Why is that? Because carbohydrates can spike your insulin. Carbohydrates can make you particularly hungry. So it will switch off this thing called leptin, which is a hormone in the body which actually allows you to feel fullness. It regulates feeling full. And it will turn on your ghrelin. So your ghrelin is a hormone that triggers the hunger signals, which will want you to have more sugar. Sugar is high in oxidative stress, so it can affect your organs. It can affect sleep. It can affect your brain chemistry. It can affect your just your organs in general, your tissue, your basically anything that's in your body that can create oxidative stress. So the reason being why people could say carbs are bad for you is not because carbs are inherently bad for you. Refined sugars, highly processed sugars, can be very bad for the body because they have higher amounts of oxidative stress, because they also carry horrible fats and other types of industrial processes that are not good for the for humans in general. The modernized diet is just not good for humans in general. So if you stick to whole grains, and if you stick to fruits that don't have any added sugars or anything like that, or yogurts, avoid smoothies at all costs, especially high fruit ones, because they're just mostly sugar. I would recommend 100 grams or less if you're trying to lose weight. If, however, you're having a very intensive weight training, intensive high intensity training, or intensive training altogether, carbohydrates are much better for people who have that kind of lifestyle, because the glycogen from the carbohydrates is absolutely necessary for your fast twitch muscle fibers. They are a good source of energy. Now, if you're not using that energy and you're living a more sedentary lifestyle, those carbohydrates and that glycogen will go to waste, and essentially those glycogen deposits will eventually turn to fat deposits, and that will create more fat over time, especially if you're on a high caloric diet. However, if your goal isn't for losing weight and it's purely for optimizing potential for fitness training, potential for optimizing your boxing routine, sports routine, whatever it is, and you're not focusing on weight loss, glycogen is absolutely necessary. Now, it depends on how intensive your sport is, or how intensive your training is on your fast twitch muscle fibers. So if you have a high demand, a high output, and you're always exercising, carbohydrate intake is definitely more essential. Now, you don't want to have poor carbohydrate intake, the same as you don't want to have poor fat or poor protein intake. So make sure it's whole grains. Make sure that you're eating the type of foods that are necessary for not just performance, but keeping your body healthy. Don't think of cutting carbohydrates out as bad. See cutting carbohydrates out, especially if you're trying to lose weight, as optimizing your health. So eat the best possible grains and eat the best possible foods you can. Now, things like bread can be highly processed as well, but sourdough bread tends to be less bad for you. So if you do want to keep bread in your diet, have sourdough bread. Now, fruit is good for you, but in high amounts, fruit is very bad for you, especially if it's slurred up into a horrible smoothie. So stick to higher vegetables, legumes, they still have carbohydrates in. And even salads have carbohydrates in. It's just that it's lower in carbohydrates, more higher in minerals, and more higher in vitamins. Yes, there are vitamins and minerals in fruits, but fruits overall can carry too much high fructose, which eventually can lead to your hunger hormone getting switched on, especially if you're trying to lose weight. That can be a bad thing. So carbs are not inherently good or bad for you. However, understanding the context of your situation makes a massive difference. I hope this has helped. If you do have questions about carbohydrates or anything else, pop a comment below. However, keep your fat intake high, because fat is also a good source of energy. Fat intake, especially, yet again, it has to be unrefined, and can, you want your essential fats, so your omega-3s. You want to have lots of fish, you want to have lots of legumes, beans, but you keep them whole, organic. The less ingredients that are in a food, i.e. the whole form and not processed, the better they are. So if you're optimizing losing weight or optimizing weight training, or any other form of training at high intensity, understand carbohydrate intake is different for everyone. Now, if you're confused about all this and you're still doing high intensity training and trying to lose weight, what I would recommend is start off at 100 grams, and then if you're feeling awful, gradually increase it, but avoid your pre-workouts, avoid all these fitness industry lifestyle kind of glucose type of foods, and the ones that just don't generally help in your overall performance, because they're just going to make it worse for you. Runners. Now, people who are running a lot, do you need lots of glycogen for running? Well, it also depends on how long. Recommendations is lots of studies are suggested that anything over 120 minutes of running, you'll need more glycogen and higher amounts of protein for muscle atrophy in your lifestyle than if you're doing 120 minutes or less. So if you're doing maybe 30 minutes of running a day, carbohydrate intake isn't necessary to have high amounts. You might feel like you might need sugar to get you through it, but trust me, it's just a short-term thing. It'll subside. Now, I hope that's helped. And like I say, comment below if you have any questions about further dietary things. Pop a message to me and I'll do that in the future videos. See you later, guys.